As an interviewer, like what's going on in that day? What does that day look like for you? What's going through your head? Like how many interviews are you doing? What's on your mind?
Yeah, I mean, it's often a very hectic day. It's often the case that you were up late the night before, or you flew in either early that morning or the night before. So you're tired. You probably had a couple of cups of coffee to get yourself ready for the day. And you're probably meeting, by the way, the folks who you're interviewing with, or the other evaluators. You're oftentimes meeting them for the first time in the morning for 15 minutes over.
So it's not like you're all from the same office, like going to, all from the Boston office going to interview kids at HBS or something.
No, it can be that way, but I think often it's a hodgepodge of people from all over who end up meeting each other, and they're going to be making decisions about candidates in a room later that day. And so you're often not in a very kind of grounded mindset as an interviewer as much as you'd like to be. I think that added to the fact that the schedules tend to be pretty packed.
I think the schedules wanted to contribute there.
Hey Siri. So the schedules tend to be pretty packed. I think usually for me it was 3 morning interviews and 3 afternoon interviews, something like that, combined with 2 sessions where you're meeting with the other interviewers and debriefing. I think I've had situations where it was even more than that.
And so tell me about what does that process look like when you meet with these other interviewers to figure out who to pass on to the next round? Like, how do you guys make that decision?
Sure. So each interviewer will have taken notes on a form, a piece of paper, where they're capturing information about the candidate's case skills and their personal experience and personal impact. And each interviewer will have a perspective of whether that candidate met kind of a minimum bar and where they excelled and where they had kind of what we'll call spikes, areas where they seem to be very distinctive. And you'll come into a room and the candidate's name will come up and there's a conversation about, hey, did anyone who interviewed this candidate, right? Not everyone will have interviewed every candidate. And then among the people who did interview the person, it's a conversation of, did anyone feel that this person didn't meet the minimum bar? And if so, why? And there'll be the need for the, whoever said that to substantiate the point they made. With some examples, just to make sure that everyone can see it and agrees with it. And then on the flip side, there's the question, where did this person really stand out? And do folks who interviewed this person agree that they stood out on these dimensions? And based on that information, you'll decide whether or not they get passed on to the next round.
And what happens, so say you go into one of those meetings and the crop of students and candidates you happen to interview, like everyone's like, oh, these candidates are all great. Like they spiked in these areas, people agree, and you've got, say 15 candidates, I don't know. Do you pass all 15 of them on to the next round? Is there any sort of, well, that's more than we need? Like what would that conversation look like?
I've never been in a situation where there's been a quota or anything like that. So it is really, I'm sure those questions come up before offers are made, right? But as an interviewer, it's really, did this person meet the bar? Did this person excel? Do we think they have what it takes to be very successful at McKinsey? And if the answer is yes, we'll recommend moving them along. So I've had situations where we're talking about a group of candidates and, unfortunately, almost none of them seemed to meet the bar. So we ended up not passing, maybe passing 1 of 6 on. But I've definitely had situations where it was the reverse and almost everyone moved on and both seemed fine.
And so as an interviewer at that stage, like you don't need to worry about like office considerations and like, oh, well, this person's interested in New York and that person's interested in Boston. So like, maybe we could pass 1 on here and 1 on there, regardless of like where they ended up in some of the skill stuff. Like you guys basically don't need to worry about that. It sounds like.
Yeah, that tends to be the focus of the recruiting teams. So I think especially in the first rounds, that stuff is much less of a consideration. Once you make it through the first round, I think whether you get a second round and how you do in the second round could be influenced by those considerations, but it's not necessarily something that the interviewers who you're meeting with are making a decision on.
So more comes down in the second rounds and probably like office staffing decisions and how many people they really need.
Exactly.